Get away from my car! The billionaire's voice cut through the cold evening like thunder. Rain hammered the streets of Manhattan, glistening against the chrome of a silver Rolls-Royce parked beside a glowing cafe window. A poor black boy, barely 12, stood trembling in front of the car, his thin jacket soaked through, one hand clutching a soggy paper bag that held 2 slices of bread. His other hand reached out timidly toward the man stepping from the vehicle. "Please, sir. My mother's sick. I just need a few dollars for her medicine," the boy pleaded, voice shaking from cold and fear. The billionaire turned. His name was Charles Devon, one of the richest men in New York, owner of Devon Industries, a man who measured worth in dollars and designer suits. His face twisted in disgust. "Medicine?" he scoffed, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "You people are all the same, lazy, dirty, and always begging. Why don't you work instead of waiting for handouts?" The boy's eyes widened, a mixture of pain and disbelief. "I do work, sir. I sell newspapers, but—" "Enough!" Charles barked, cutting him off. "If you're poor, that's your fault. Don't blame the world for your failures." He stepped inside his luxury car, slammed the door, and a second later the wheels splashed through a puddle, muddy water splattering over the boy's worn-out shoes. The Rolls-Royce disappeared into the night, leaving behind only exhaust fumes and humiliation. The boy stood frozen. The rain ran down his face, mixing with tears he refused to let fall. His name was Malik Carter. In that moment, alone, soaked, and shivering, he felt something ignite deep inside him. It wasn't hate. It was a burning promise. One day, I'll never have to beg anyone again. One day, he'll know my name. Malik turned toward the dim alley that led to the small apartment he shared with his mother. The building was old, its bricks cracked, its windows fogged with dampness. Inside, the single bulb flickered as his mother lay coughing on a thin mattress. When he entered, she tried to smile through her weakness. "Did you get something to eat, baby?" Malik forced a grin and handed her the bread. "Yes, Mama. Don't worry. I'll buy your medicine tomorrow." She brushed his cheek with trembling fingers. "You've got such a good heart, Malik. Never let this world make you cruel." He nodded, but his mind was still replaying the billionaire's words. Lazy, dirty, beggar. Each word struck him harder than the rain had. He sat beside his mother until she fell asleep, then quietly stepped out again, walking toward the dim streetlight on the corner. There, with newspapers wrapped in plastic to keep them dry, he started working again, calling out headlines, chasing customers who barely looked at him. Every rejection fed his determination. Beneath the same rain that drenched his childhood, Malik whispered to himself, "One day, I'll build something of my own, and no one will ever look down on me again." The city lights flickered on the wet pavement like distant stars, unreachable but visible. Malik gazed at them, believing that somehow, someday, one of those lights would belong to him. That insult, those few cruel words from a man who had everything, had just changed the course of his life forever. Because 15 years later, that same boy would walk into the billionaire's office, not as a beggar, but as the man who now owned everything Charles Devon had lost. The night Malik was insulted by Charles Devon never left his memory. It became the fuel that burned quietly in his heart, a fire that neither poverty nor pain could put out. Every morning before sunrise, Malik was out on the streets again, his hands numb from the cold, calling out the day's headlines, hoping to sell enough papers to buy food and medicine. Life didn't give him mercy. His mother's illness worsened, the medicine cost too much, and sometimes they survived only on water and bread. But no matter how hard things got, Malik never begged. Again, the humiliation from that rainy night had carved a lesson deep inside him. He would earn everything he ever needed. At night, while the city slept, Malik sat near the window with an old second-hand notebook and a half-broken pencil. He would sketch ideas, machines, and sometimes write about dreams he didn't fully understand. He wanted to build something that mattered. One day, after selling his last newspaper, he noticed the public library lights were still on. The librarian, a kind elderly woman named Mrs. Green, smiled at him. "You can come in, child. The rain's bad tonight." Malik hesitated but stepped inside. The smell of books, ink, and paper filled the air. A different world, one of knowledge and possibility. He began visiting daily, sitting quietly in a corner, reading everything he could, from science magazines to computer guides, even though half the words were hard to understand. Over the next few years, Malik balanced odd jobs, washing dishes, cleaning windows, delivering mail, anything that could keep him and his mother alive. Slowly, he began to grasp the language of technology. He'd borrow discarded computers, fix them, and study how they worked. Then one night, his mother's cough didn't stop. He held her hand, tears blurring his vision. "Mama, please stay with me. I'll take care of you, I promise." She smiled weakly and whispered, "Son, don't let the world decide your worth. Promise me you'll rise but never lose your kindness." Those were her last words. Her death shattered him. For days, Malik didn't speak. But then he found her worn Bible on the bedside table, with one line underlined, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." That verse struck him like lightning. He realized he had two choices: stay broken or rise stronger. From me. That moment, Malik poured himself into learning. He worked during the day and studied computer programming at night through free community classes. His intelligence caught the attention of Professor William Harris, a retired engineer who volunteered there. "Malik, you've got a mind built for innovation," the professor said one evening. "You remind me of myself when I was your age, hungry to change the world." Under Harris's guidance, Malik learned not only technology, but also discipline, patience, and purpose. He created small apps that helped local shopkeepers manage sales or allowed kids to learn math for free. Every failure, every long night, every meal he skipped, it all became part of his story. The poor boy from the streets was quietly building his future, brick by brick, line by line, and though the world still didn't know his name, Malik knew one thing for sure: he would never be invisible again. Years passed, and Malik's name slowly began to carry weight, not on billboards or in magazines yet, but in the small communities he helped. He was no longer the barefoot boy selling newspapers. He was a man driven by vision, a man who believed that technology should serve humanity, not just profit. At 21, Malik won a scholarship to a top university after Professor Harris nominated him for a national competition. The day he received the acceptance letter, he stood silently at his mother's grave, clutching the paper. "I made it, Mama," he whispered. "This is just the beginning." University life was harsh at first. Surrounded by wealthier students, Malik worked 2 part-time jobs, cleaning halls and tutoring, just to survive. But he never complained. He spent nights in the computer lab, coding ideas that most people laughed at. While others chased grades, Malik chased impact. He developed a small app called Learn Free, designed to give underprivileged students access to free online lessons and books. At first, only a few schools used it, but soon teachers began spreading the word. Within months, thousands of kids across the country were learning through Malik's platform. But success never came easy. When Malik pitched his idea to investors, most rejected him without a second glance. One executive smirked and said, "Education for the poor doesn't make money, son. Try something realistic." Malik walked out of that meeting, smiling faintly, because he remembered another man who once told him he'd never make it. He knew better than to let arrogance stop him now. Finally, one investor, Clara Jennings, a kind, middle-aged entrepreneur, saw something in him. "You're not just selling an app, Malik," she said. "You're building hope, and that's worth more than any profit." With her help, Malik founded Hope Tech, a company focused on technology that solved real problems. Education, healthcare, community development. The same streets that once ignored him now displayed his company's logo on bright billboards. As years passed, Hope Tech grew beyond imagination. Malik became one of the youngest billionaires in the country, not because he chased wealth, but because he chased purpose. He built schools in low-income areas, funded scholarships, and launched charity projects under his mother's name. Meanwhile, far across the city, the man who once insulted him, Charles Devon, was losing everything. His company, once an empire, began to crumble under scandals, lawsuits, and greed. His arrogance had finally caught up with him. 15 years after that rainy night, destiny was quietly rearranging itself. The poor boy who once begged for medicine had become a symbol of hope. The billionaire who mocked him was now a desperate man searching for help, and soon their paths would cross again. The years had not been kind to Charles Devon. Once a powerful billionaire with an empire stretching across the globe, he now sat alone in a cramped apartment, his reflection in the window almost unrecognizable. His company, Devon Industries, had collapsed under the weight of corruption scandals, unpaid debts, and his own arrogance. The people who once shook his hand now avoided his calls. His wife had left, his business partners had betrayed him, and his fortune, once measured in billions, was gone. But the greatest wound was not financial. It was humiliation. Charles Devon, the man who once looked down on the poor, was now broke, searching for a job to survive. One morning, he saw an ad in the newspaper. Hope Tech expanding nationwide. Senior consultant positions available for experienced executives. The name Hope Tech rang faintly in his mind, but he didn't remember where he had heard it. Desperate, he circled the ad, brushed off his worn-out suit, and sent his application. To his surprise, a week later, he received an interview call. His heart raced. Maybe this was his chance. Maybe fate was finally offering him redemption. The letter said, "Interview with CEO at Hope Tech headquarters, 10 a.m. sharp." The next morning, Charles arrived early. The headquarters stood like a gleaming monument of glass and steel, clean, modern, full of life. Young employees walked confidently through the lobby, greeting each other with warmth. It was nothing like the cold, greedy offices he once ran. As he sat waiting, he glanced at the wall behind the reception desk. There, framed in silver, was a quote, "Success means nothing if you forget kindness." Malik Carter, founder and CEO. The name hit him like a sudden chill. Malik Carter. It sounded familiar, but his memory couldn't quite place it. Before he could think further, the receptionist smiled. "Mr. Devon, the CEO will see you now." Charles stood, straightened his old tie, and walked into the office. The door opened into a wide, sunlit room. At the center sat a young man in an elegant black suit, confident, composed, with a calm intensity in his eyes. He rose from his chair and extended a hand. "Mr. Devon," the man said softly, "please have a seat." Charles nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I appreciate the opportunity." The man studied him quietly for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Tell me, Mr. Devon," he said, "do you believe people can change?" Charles frowned slightly, unsure where this was going. "Of course. Everyone deserves a second chance." The man leaned forward, his tone calm but sharp. "Interesting, because 15 years ago I was a boy standing outside your car, asking for help for my sick mother." The color drained from Charles's face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Malik continued softly. "You told me that if I was poor, it was my fault. You told me people like me were lazy. Do you remember that?" Charles's voice trembled. I didn't know. I was a different man then. Malik stood and looked out the window. So was I. He turned back, meeting Charles's eyes. That night your words changed me. They taught me what it means to be looked down on. But they also taught me what I never wanted to become. The room was silent. Charles finally whispered, I'm sorry, Malik. Truly. I lost everything. I don't even deserve to sit here. Malik's expression softened. No, Mr. Devon. You deserve to be here. Because sometimes life brings us full circle, not for revenge, but for reflection. He slid a paper across the desk, a job offer. Hope Tech doesn't turn people away, not even those who once did. Charles stared at it, his eyes welling up. You're giving me a chance? Malik nodded. A chance. The same thing I once asked for. For the first time in years, Charles Devon wept. Not from loss, but from realization. The elevator. Doors slid open with a soft ding, and silence filled the 50th floor of the towering glass building. Every employee stood frozen, eyes wide, as Daniel Carter, the man who once ruled the city's skyline, stepped into his old empire, now belonging to someone else. At the far end of the corridor, behind a sleek glass desk, sat a man in an immaculate black suit, calm, confident, and commanding. His skin glowed under the morning light streaming through the panoramic windows. It was Jaden Brooks, the same boy Daniel had once insulted in the rain years ago. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he slowly approached, his once proud shoulders now slumped under the weight of regret. Jaden stood up, his face expressionless, but his eyes sharp, the kind that had seen pain, poverty, and perseverance all at once. Mr. Carter, Jaden said quietly, his deep voice steady. It's been a long time. Daniel hesitated. Jaden, I didn't realize... Jaden smiled faintly. That the boy you splashed mud on would end up sitting in your chair? Daniel swallowed hard. His hands trembled slightly. I was wrong back then. I said things I shouldn't have. I was angry, arrogant. Jaden cut him off softly. You were powerful, and you thought that made you better. A tense silence filled the room. Daniel looked around at the golden interior, his once great empire rebuilt by the very person he had humiliated. I lost everything, Daniel admitted. My company, my fortune, even my family. I came here to ask for one last chance, to work for you. I can't survive like this anymore. Jaden looked at him for a long moment, not with hatred, but with something deeper. Understanding. He walked around the desk and stopped right in front of the man who once called him lazy and worthless. Do you know what your words did to me, Mr. Carter? Jaden asked. They broke me for years, but they also built me. Every insult, every humiliation, every night I went to bed hungry, it became my reason to fight harder. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Jaden. Truly. Jaden nodded slowly, then turned toward the city skyline. You taught me a lesson back then, that the world doesn't hand you anything. But you forgot something too. Humanity. He turned back, placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder, and said, You'll work here again, but not as a boss. You'll start from the bottom. You'll learn what humility feels like. Daniel's voice cracked. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. Jaden smiled softly. Don't thank me. Earn it. As Daniel walked away, his steps were heavy, but this time filled with a strange kind of peace. Jaden looked out the window once more, whispering to himself. Some insults break you, others build you. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to smile, not because he had won against someone else, but because he had conquered the hate that once lived inside him. Never underestimate someone because of where they are. You never know where they'll end up. Life has a strange way of turning tables. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment, "Never give up," if you believe pain can become power. And don't forget to follow for more emotional stories that remind us. No insult lasts forever, but strength does.